a major escalation in President Trump's trade war. The president now firing back at the retaliation Europe took yesterday. Here is what he just posted. Quote, "The European Union has just put a nasty 50% tariff on whiskey. If this tariff is not removed immediately, the U.S. will shortly place a 200% tariff on all wines, champagnes, and alcoholic products coming out of France and other EU-represented countries." CNN's Elena Treen with us right now. We've got this message here. This is the president sort of jumping back at France, who, by the way, was hit with tariffs when he put a huge tariffs on the EU this week. What are you hearing?
Yeah, look, Sarah, this is actually, one, not totally unexpected, given if you've listened to what the president has said repeatedly. He really, and when I talk to Trump administration and White House officials, they essentially say that they believe that the president is right to put these tariffs on these different countries. And if they're going to retaliate with tariffs of their own, that he's going to punch back several times harder. And that is what we are seeing today with this announcement in this Truth Social post. I just want to read a little bit for you. He said he would impose a 200% tariff on alcoholic beverages from the EU. He said if this tariff is not removed immediately, that's the 50% tariff, that the European government had put on United States goods following the tariffs that Trump had initially placed on all steel and aluminum coming to the United States. He said if this tariff is not removed immediately, the U.S. will shortly place a 200% tariff on all wines, champagnes, and alcoholic products coming out of France and other EU-represented countries. He went on to argue that this would be great for the wine and champagne business in the United States. But look, I think this approach that the president and his administration is taking shows just how quickly some of this tariff policy can get out of hand. We are really seeing this not only stop and go approach, but also this tit-for-tat retaliation back and forth with a lot of these different allies of the United States that are beginning to really not only obviously affect the markets, which we have seen on a downward spiral for the last couple of days now, but also the relationships that the United States have with these different trading partners. Now, I do also want to point out, though, how Donald Trump sees this as a negotiating tactic. He made that very clear yesterday in the Oval Office. And part of that negotiation we are going to see continue today when Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick and the United States Trade Representative Jamieson Green is going to meet with some of Canada's top officials. Sarah.
Yeah, look, Elena, when you consider this, I've never thought I'd ever have to say this, but there might be a run on champagne because France is the only one that officially has the champagne as a name. Everything else is sparkling wine. We will see what happens here, but this is what a trade war is. If you start and someone else responds, you're then in the middle of a big fight. Elena Treen, thank you so much for your reporting there from the White House for us. I want to get straight to the breaking news, which is Donald Trump is threatening even bigger tariffs on Europe because of the EU responding and France responding to the initial tariffs, saying that they're going to put a 50% tariff on U.S. alcohol. Trump now saying he's going to put a 200% tariff on any of the alcoholic beverages coming from France. I want to let you both listen to what we heard from Tommy Tuberville before Donald Trump made this new fight even stronger. Here's what he said about how Americans should be responding to the tariffs.
No pain, no gain. That's what we used to tell our football players. There's going to be some pain with tariffs. But tariffs got us back as the strongest economy in the world when President Trump was in the first time. He knows what he's doing. Democrats, get out of the way. Shut up. You have no answers.
Zolan, what do you think about what you're hearing from Tommy Tuberville telling Democrats, look, you get out of the way, you don't have any answers, and everyone else who is looking at these tariffs, when you look at the polling, says we don't like them?
You know, one of the more significant changes when it comes to the rhetoric of Republicans and allies of President Trump and Trump himself has been the remarks about consumer prices and almost the message to voters about what to expect in terms of the pain, the economic pain that they may feel. There with Tuberville's remarks, I also hear no pain, no gain. And there's something interesting there. It's almost like you're hearing Republicans continue to tell voters that there may actually trying to almost hedge expectations on the economic frustrations that will come. We know that with this administration, that the president has centered in many ways his foreign policy when it comes to the Western Hemisphere as well as Europe around tariff threats. We know that that's going to continue. The thing to watch now moving forward is how do voters respond, especially as the weeks go on and you may see, most economists would say, consumer prices would go up. As that frustration builds, will voters start to turn that frustration against the administration and against the position of using these tariffs this frequently? I think the thing that we have to watch in the weeks forward as you continue to see these tariff threats are not just the response by different nations, but also how voters respond, including in town halls, which we've seen in recent weeks.
Right.
The US president as well, focusing on tit-for-tat trade war a short time ago, firing back at the European Union, which yesterday unveiled its response to his tariffs on steel and aluminium. In a social media post, Mr. Trump threatening a massive 200% tariff on wine, champagne, and alcohol from the EU unless it rescinds the 50% tariff it imposed on US spirits yesterday. CNN business and politics correspondent Vanessa Yurkevich is live in New York with the latest. Honestly, what a stunning clapback from the president. I'm just taking a look at some of these spirit firms, alcohol firms, and they're all much lower. I just don't know how much of this we can possibly stomach and, how much of this the markets can actually price in. Vanessa, take us through what we're seeing.
Yeah, it's pretty impossible on both sides of the equation here. I mean, the markets right now and investors are really trying to understand sort of two tales of the economy right now. On one hand, you have the president who has ignited a global trade war, as you mentioned, threatening to put a 200% tariff on French wines, champagnes, things that U.S. consumers arguably drink a lot of, because the European Union retaliated with their own tariffs on things like whiskey here in the U.S. because of the steel and aluminum tariffs that President Trump put in place. Now, you see markets there digesting that picture down slightly, but at the same time, we are getting good consumer news here in the U.S. Just yesterday, consumer prices fell, and today we got producer prices. That's what producers pay, businesses pay for wholesale items. That fell substantially. And so we're seeing two pictures play out. Lower prices for Americans, but the threat of an escalating trade war that could increase prices for Americans. And you've been seeing markets for really the past 2 weeks now trying to grapple with these two different scenarios that are playing out at the same time. Eventually, they are going to collide, but you can see their markets down just slightly, trying to really digest all of this news that's coming out this morning.
Yeah, there's a lot. As you say, markets, companies, CEOs are trying to digest what this ultimately means. And I think there's so much uncertainty. We just don't know which industry is going to be hit next. But Walmart is feeling the heat from the president's tariffs. What can you tell us about how it's impacting? And this is a really important example of how it can hit one of the largest multinationals in the United States.
Yeah, exactly. And Walmart is often considered the bellwether for the U.S. economy here in the U.S. because so many people shop at Walmart for affordable prices. But we're learning that Chinese officials are telling CNN that Walmart executives were in the country trying to get the producers there to lower their prices to offset tariffs, because at the end of the day, it's consumers that are going to have to pay those higher prices. So Walmart executives were in the country talking to producers, trying to get them to lower prices on production. And this is something that does happen regularly. Big companies are always trying to negotiate prices with their producers of products. But the different scenario that we're in right now is that there is a very high tariff on exports coming from China to the U.S., 30% and upwards. So Walmart, for their part, says that they were doing this to try to save their consumers money. Here's what they said in a statement. They said, "Our conversation with suppliers are all aimed at making our purpose a reality for millions of customers, and we will continue to work closely with them to find the best way forward during these uncertain times." Now, Walmart is not the only company.
Yeah,
no, I was just saying Walmart's not the only company grappling with this. Yeah,
I wanted to say they're all going to be reviewing their supply chains, right? That's the point, to try and figure out how they can localize.
Yeah, and we know that in the first trade war, let's say in 2018, a lot of companies did make the move to move a lot of their supply chain out of China when there were tariffs and reciprocal tariffs going back and forth. But ultimately, the U.S. relies so much on production out of China. It is very difficult to move entire supply chains. We know that businesses in the past couple months have been looking into this. But for Walmart, really the biggest retailer here in the U.S., to be struggling with these tariffs, that certainly says a lot.